You live in America, the place you grew up, the place you'd like to see your children grow up, in much the way that you did. But that won't be possible because of the single greatest sellout in our history. Hundreds of years of America eliminated by an invasion that our leaders made possible. You should know that.
President Joe Biden has a well-documented history of exaggerating his accomplishments while downplaying his failures. But in recent months, the president has taken this dishonest strategy to a whole new level, routinely misleading the American people to score political points, especially on topics related to economic growth.
Well, that inflation's not going away. We're getting the nightmare landing. We're going to grow in the first half at about 1%, and we're going to have basically core inflation at 4%. You know, Chairman Powell likes to look at services because that's where wages really push. And we've been hearing about how shelter's going to come down and save us. If you take energy and shelter out of services, inflation is 4%. That's not 2%. That's double what you want. If this is a soft landing, well, gee, I don't know how landing without wheels is a soft landing, because that's what this feels like.
Lie 1. America's inflation problem is improving. When Biden entered the White House in January 2021, inflation was a minuscule 1.4%. Then, Biden signed into the law the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan and a $1.1 trillion infrastructure package. Shortly thereafter, inflation skyrocketed.
Essence of it is. And I'm going to have a lot more to say about that tonight and the next couple days and be able to take your questions. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is sign this bill and make the presentation tonight. And then there's going to be plenty of opportunities. We're going to be on the road, not only talking about what I'm talking about tonight is the impact on the virus and how we're going to end this pandemic. And we're going to talk all the elements of the bill beginning on Friday, Saturday, through the week. So, thank you for being here. Got it. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Despite rising inflation, Biden and his Democratic colleagues for months inexplicably chose to ignore the data and instead push for more spending programs, in the process claiming that the sudden surge in inflation was merely transitory. Many in the administration also said that inflation would subside by late 2021. They were wrong.
No, they're not. I mean, they're telling people don't believe your lying eyes and your thinning wallet. I mean, the reality is that these things are hitting them and people incredibly hard. Just a few weeks ago, the New York Times reported that Thanksgiving was going to be the most expensive in the history of the holiday. The price of everything from turkey to coffee to the aluminum roasting pan were going up. Yeah. Well, now we learned from the Wall Street Journal that that's if you can get those things. Turkeys are 60% sold out. Yams are 25% out of stock. Cranberry sauce, 20% out of stock. So we've got both higher prices and lack of availability, empty store shelves when it comes to your Thanksgiving dinner. And if you want to go to your relatives and drive to your relatives on a Thanksgiving trip, gas is $1.31 more expensive now than it was a year ago, which is a 7-year high in gas prices.
Today, 2 years into the Biden era, inflation remains stubbornly high. The 12-month increase in the Consumer Price Index was 6.4% in January. But rather than acknowledge that his policies have failed, Biden has repeatedly claimed inflation is improving and prices are going down. Although it's accurate to say the rate of inflation has eased compared to the record numbers in the summer of 2022, inflation remains at historically high levels. What would have cost $100 in January 2020 costs nearly $116 today. The rate of increase in prices may have dropped in recent months, but overall, prices are still much higher. Most importantly, there has been no sign that we're headed toward price deflation anytime soon. And without deflation, prices will continue to be much greater than they were prior to Biden becoming president.
So I'm heading off to Philadelphia, and if you want to ask me a question about the economy, but I'm not going to answer any question about anything else because you never will cover this.
Mr. President, why did you decide to postpone Secretary Blinken's trip? Do you take any blame for inflation, Mr. President?
Am I taking blame for inflation? No.
Why not?
because it was already there when I got here, man. Remember what the economy was like when I got here? Jobs were hemorrhaging, inflation was rising, we weren't manufacturing a damn thing here, we were in real economic difficulty. That's why I don't. Thank you.
Mr. President, when and how will you remain with Berlin? When and how will you remain with Berlin, Mr. President?
Lie 2. Biden created 12.7 million new jobs. Throughout his 2 years in the Oval Office, Biden has made exaggerated or outright dishonest claims about resurrecting America's labor market. For example, in his recent State of the Union address, Biden said that he has created 12.7 million new jobs, more jobs created in 2 years than any president has ever created in 4 years.
The United States government owns and maintains an enormous fleet of vehicles. We're going to convert those government vehicles into electric vehicles, made in America, sourced right here in the United States of America. With the government providing the demand and support to retool factories that are struggling to compete, the United States automobile industry will set up expanding the capacity in the United States, not China, to lead the world in clean energy vehicles. I can't wait to get us behind that all-electric Corvette that goes 210 miles an hour. Y'all think I'm kidding, I mean it. Last year, that converted Corvette set a speed record of 210.2 miles per hour, electric vehicle. So don't tell me we don't still make the best cars right here in the United States of America. And together, this will mean, listen to me now, 1 million new jobs in the American automobile industry.
Lie 3. Biden cut the deficit by more than $1.7 trillion. The White House has on numerous occasions claimed that Biden has made significant cuts to government spending. Most recently, it suggested Biden has reduced the deficit by $1.7 trillion. Like Biden's jobs claim, this assertion is incredibly misleading and dishonest.
Well, I'm glad the speaker's here today. We're optimistic we may be able to make some progress because we both agreed that default's not really on the table. We got to get something done here. And the consequence for failing to pay our bills would be that American people would have a real kick on their economic well-being. As a matter of fact, the rest of the world would too. And so we also agree we need to reduce the deficit. And I might add, in my first 2 years as president, I reduced it by $1.7 trillion. It matters. And so I'm all for continue to reduce the deficit.
In 2020, the deficit skyrocketed as Congress passed several multi-trillion-dollar COVID-19 relief bills, all of which had received significant support from Democrats. By 2021, when Biden became president, some of the emergency spending started to come off the books, automatically reducing the deficit. It's very strange that people can still believe this old madman. He lost our trust a long time ago. None of what he says is true. I would say this: we need to prepare for the worst and possibly the beginning of a war. What's happening on the border? What's going on in Iraq and other countries where we have people? Biden is a corrupt puppet who can't handle the role of someone who has to read from a piece of paper.
So I know President Xi better than I know you, which is pretty good.
Really?
Okay, yeah, I really think so. So I know him very well. I've dealt with him many times. He came up Mar-a-Lago, as you know. He stayed.
Well, he's not a friend of the United States, I don't think.
No, he doesn't hate the United States, but he loves China. He wants to take everything away from the United States. He wants to not destroy the United States, he just wants everything. You gotta understand, this is a man who's at the top of his game. He's dealing with an incompetent person in Joe Biden. He's never seen anything like it. And I was very tough on China. I tariffed them to a level 25 and 50% everything. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars. By the way, the happiest person in the world was President Xi. And I got along with him great, but he is all for China. He doesn't care anything about our country. And I'll tell you this, he doesn't believe when he meets with Joe Biden, he thinks it's a joke. He can't believe, he sees this guy. If you would see President Xi, you can't duplicate him in Hollywood. There's nobody in Hollywood could play the role. These people, these leaders are at the top of their game. These are smart people.
New York Democrats are sounding the alarm that President Biden and other party leaders' failure to keep immigration under control has political consequences. While New York State may be widely perceived as a Democratic Party stronghold, some local leaders have warned that issues like the mass immigration are not only disrupting the lives of New Yorkers, but the party's grip on the state.
First tonight, Democrats ring the alarm bells on illegal immigration in sanctuary cities. Of course, they don't call it that. Evil Republican governors are to blame for allowing migrants to head north once they cross the Rio Grande. But of the most progressive minds, they can hardly contain their anger. This influx of people, they say, must stop. From Illinois to Massachusetts, from California to New York City, they just can't take it anymore.
Find ourselves in this situation, and it's unsustainable. For this reason, today I am declaring a state of emergency in Massachusetts.
They won't tell us how many infants or children, seniors or families are on board. They won't tell us what route they take or when they will arrive. They won't provide any information that would actually help their fellow Americans welcome and care for these human beings.
You are a sanctuary state. Why don't you embrace them and say thank you for sending them?
We embrace everybody here.
We should not be burdened the weight of this problem.
The New York Times published a piece on Saturday headlined, "New York's migrant crisis is growing, so are Democrats' anxieties," suggesting the Democratic Party may face yet another reckoning in the state after it was unexpectedly disrupted by GOP contenders in the 2022 midterm elections. The New York Times reporter cited how multiple Democrat leaders seek to avoid being caught flat-footed as they were a year ago, as candidates ranging from Long Island to Hudson Valley are openly clashing, not just with Republicans who say they are to blame, but also with their own party leaders, including President Biden.
Good morning, Cheryl. A very exciting day for students across New York City. It is the first day of school. It's also the first day of school for the thousands of asylum seekers that are currently residing in New York City. Mayor Eric Adams making a stark warning yesterday of this situation, being very clear of just how out of hand it's gotten. Take a listen.
This issue will destroy New York City. We're getting 10,000 migrants a month.
The big concern this school year is the overwhelming amount of students in the system. Last year, around 19,000 students were in the school system and eligible. This year, it's unclear exactly how many migrants will be coming to class. The Department of Education says that there are 30,000 migrants of school age, and last month alone, 2,500 were enrolled into school. They say that number keeps growing. That is why local lawmakers say the situation is out of control. It's unclear how many kids will show up to school day one. There are language barriers, teacher shortages, and vaccination concerns. I want to bring in Councilman David Carr of Staten Island. Let's start first with the vaccination concerns. What are you hearing from parents on that issue?
Parents want children who are coming to the school to follow the same rules that they have to follow. Their children have to be vaccinated and have proof of such before they enter the school building at the start of the year.
One example was Rep. Pat Ryan, DNY, who was described as the lone frontline Democrat to survive the Republican suburban demolition last year. It was noted that the lawmaker teamed up with two Republicans to demand that Mr. Biden declare a state of emergency and broke with his party to support a bill to discourage schools from sheltering migrants. After big Republican victories in Virginia, Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich said on the Brian Kilmeade Show Wednesday that the Democratic Party is heading for a challenge when it comes to picking a 2024 presidential candidate.
I want to start with the current president. Did you see the video of when he fell?
Yeah.
And did you see the video? He actually said, by the way, I met with, who are those guys that are going to fly over shortly?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your president right now.
Not too good. It's sad. It's sad. It's not, it's, they're representing, we are all representing the country. You become president, and you're sort of not allowed to do that, but it's happened. It's happened, and it's happened pretty badly. We won't go into it, but we all know the ones, and they count those acts, they never forget. But that was a bad fall.
I remember remember the media made so much. I think you were at West Point at the time.
Yeah.
And you were coming down a ramp.
Yeah.
It didn't have a rail. You had dress shoes on like you have now, which have very slippery soles.
Correct. They look a little better, but you better not walk in rain. That's true.
Especially downhill on a ramp.
You know, it was very interesting. I think I made my best speech. That was my best speech. And I was so proud of it. It was pouring. It was pouring. And I said, this speech was so good. And then I said, how do I get down? Sir, you have to go down the ramp. I said, the same when I came up, it was a long, like an ice skating rink. And they said, yes, sir. And I had the general next to me, the commandant of cadets, nice guy, big guy, strong guy. I said, General, and he's wearing combat boots. They don't slip too much. I said, General, get ready, because I may have to grab you here. But I said, I'm not falling. There's no way. So I'd go tippy-toe down the thing. That was a mistake.
Newt Gingrich. Biden is not a dynamic leader. He wasn't a dynamic leader when he was younger, and he sure is not going to become a dynamic leader when he falls asleep in public. So Biden is not going to be the solution. Kamala Harris's great function in life, which is to make us grateful that Biden is there because the idea of Kamala Harris as president is truly horrifying. She is a person who knows nothing and proves that almost every time she shows up in public. I think they have a challenge. Whether or not they know they have a challenge is a different question, because one of the great problems with the Democratic Party is that it's very isolated from the real world. They get in rooms and talk to themselves. The problem is that they're now trapped in this big government socialism in the country.
On Monday, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the Biden administration is legally allowed to open the border by force to cut down razor wire along the Rio Grande sector of the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas. The usual suspects voted for this: Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson, but they were joined by so-called conservative justices John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. So in response to this ruling, which shocked many, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, drafted a letter, not simply to the administration, but to the world. And here's part of what it says. Under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years. That is more than the population of 33 different states in this country. This illegal refusal to protect the states has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people all across the United States. Abbott goes on to say the state of Texas has the authority under the Constitution to, quote, protect itself. That authority is the supreme law of the land, and it supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. And then, following very quickly, 25 other states with Republican governors signed a letter pledging their support to Texas and its constitutional right to defend itself and this country.
Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, R., said the standoff between President Biden and Texas Governor Greg Abbott, R., over the border is a powder keg worth of tension. This is a powder keg worth of tension, Stitt said Thursday in an interview on Newsmax highlighted by Media IT. So it's a very weird situation. We certainly stand with Texas on the right to defend themselves, but Biden's going to be in a tough situation. The Texas National Guard on Tuesday appeared to disregard a recent Supreme Court decision that allows border agents to remove razor wire erected by Texas and continued building such barriers on the southern border. Stitt, alongside fellow Republican govs, Kristi Noem, SD, Ron DeSantis, FLA, Glenn Youngkin, VA, and Brian Kemp, GA, backed Abbott in his actions.
Well, Stuart, that'd be a huge mistake for the Biden administration if they do that. The last time any National Guard troops were federalized was during the Eisenhower administration and the Little Rock Nine. And if Joe Biden does this, he maybe, go down in history as the Mexican drug cartel 9 million, because there have been almost 9 million people that have crossed the border illegally over the last 3 years under his watch. So I think politically it's a disaster. I think from a policy standpoint, it would be a horrible move. But we'll see. But this administration has done both those things. They've made bad policy decisions, and they've made bad political ones.
If the Constitution really made states powerless to defend themselves against an invasion, it wouldn't have been ratified in the first place, and Texas would have never joined the Union when it did, DeSantis said on X, formerly Twitter. TX is upholding the law while Biden is flouting it. Youngkin said in his own X post that the Biden administration has turned every state into a border state. Virginia stands with Texas, Youngkin's post read. Greg Abbott, TX is doing the job Joe Biden and his border czar refused to do to secure our border. Some Democrats, like Reps Joaquin Castro, Texas, and Greg Casar, Texas, have expressed their support for the nationalization of the Texas National Guard to align it with the court decision and federal law.
They are, and as you pointed out, and as Border Patrol Council and Border Patrol members have made clear to Texas and to myself, they want to have nothing to do with regard to tearing down that razor wire or tearing down the barriers that Texas has erected for one simple reason, and that's because they are working. Border Patrol says that what Texas has done to secure the border actually makes their job even easier. The only resistance we're facing is coming from Joe Biden.
It's fun to watch his ratings drop. A good-for-nothing old man is losing his mind, and the country as well. People are no longer as supportive of him as they used to be. Don't forget to comment on this video and watch other shocking news on this channel.